So the president-elect, Donald Trump, he has selected former Democratic Congresswoman turned Trump supporter Tulsi Gabbard as his pick to be Director of National Intelligence. If confirmed, that would mean Gabbard would oversee the 18 agencies that make up the entire U.S. intelligence apparatus, including overseeing the CIA. Why this announcement is now sending shockwaves includes Gabbard seen by many as an apologist for brutal foreign powers, including the leader of Syria, the same leader, that man, who has used chemical weapons on his own citizens. Gabbard even traveled to Syria for what she called at the time a fact-finding mission and met with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. She later responded to questions about that trip with statements like this.
Do you think Assad is our enemy?
Assad is not the enemy of the United States because Syria does not pose a direct threat to the United States.
The man used chemical weapons on his people. And then there is this from National Security Affairs expert Tom Nichols, writing for The Atlantic in a new piece, the following. She has no qualifications as an intelligence professional, literally none. And her appointment would be a threat to the security of the United States. Joining me right now is John Bolton, a former national security advisor under President Trump and a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Thanks so much, Ambassador. Tulsi Gabbard, what are your thoughts this morning?
Well, I thought it was the worst cabinet-level appointment in history until they then heard about the Matt Gaetz appointment. Really, my reaction was that this is like the legend of Caligula, the Roman emperor, who wanted to nominate his horse as a Roman consul. You had to be a Roman senator at the time to be a consul, and it was intended to show how demeaned and degraded the Roman Senate had become. So now we're going to see whether the American Senate can stand up and reject two people who are totally unqualified, unfit professionally, and really lacking in the moral characteristics, the character that you need to hold these jobs. I think this vote should be 100-0 against both of them.
And even before they get there, I heard you say that you think both should face a full field investigation before they're even granted confirmation hearings. Why is that?
Look, it's typical for most senior nominations that people get a full field FBI investigation. I can't count how many I've had, updates and all the rest of it. And those, by the way, those investigations on all the cabinet nominees can begin right now. The way the FBI conversation with somebody starts off is to say, Mr. X is being considered for a senior government official, and I'd like to ask you questions about him. So you can begin the FBI investigations now and be ready for confirmation hearings even before Donald Trump is sworn in. There's no question here of delaying things. So it's very typical. It should be for everybody, but especially for these two. In the case of Gaetz, you've got a House Ethics Committee within a few days of issuing an apparently pretty difficult report. I can't wait to see that. And that report will get out one way or another. And in Tulsi Gabbard's case, she said some of the most incredible things, including, as I recall, a reference to the real cause of Russia's invasion of Ukraine being chemical weapons plants in the Ukraine that were joint U.S.-Ukrainian efforts. This is just insane. She said in response to an interview with Jake Tapper in January 8th, 2020, right after the Congress was briefed about the effective elimination of Qasem Soleimani, a presidential decision by Donald Trump, she said she wasn't convinced by the briefings about this, and I quote, illegal and unconstitutional act of war by Donald Trump. So that's the kind of person that Trump has now nominated. It shows he hasn't vetted them at all. That's what an FBI investigation is for. Every other nominee should go through it too, but I think Congress should insist they want to see the results of this in particular.
So there's lots of talk that Trump could use or may be forced to use recess appointments to get these people in. Looking back at the George W. Bush years, Bush used a recess appointment to get you into the post of U.S. ambassador to the UN after Democrats and some Republicans blocked your nomination in 2005. Ambassador, how do you feel about recess appointments now when you look at these two options being included there?
Well, just on my situation, it was a recess appointment because at that time you had to get 60 votes to overcome a filibuster, which Joe Biden himself said to me. He was the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that I would have gotten. And the Republican who opposed me, George Voinovich, later wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post after I'd been up at the UN for a while, said he would support me. So leaving that aside, recess appointment is a presidential power. And appropriate in circumstances like mine where the Democrats were being obstructionist. Republicans control the Senate now, and I think the leadership will try and get people through on an expedited basis. The Democrats have blocked the recess appointment for years by never recessing. So, you know, this is a constitutional struggle between the two branches, but to say that recess appointments are illegitimate is just wrong.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you so much.
Donald Trump wants former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard to be his Director of National Intelligence. As recently as 4 years ago, she ran for the Democratic presidential nomination, but she has since left the party and is now a staunch ally of President-elect Trump, who believes the intelligence community has been weaponized against him. The head of the DNI role has broad oversight into the U.S. intelligence community. Gabbard is an Army veteran, but she has never served in any capacity in an intelligence agency, and she's often been skeptical of U.S. intelligence in the past. When she was still a member of Congress in 2017, Gabbard met with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad as civil war broke out in his country with U.S.-backed rebels. 2 years later, I pressed her about whether Assad was a U.S. adversary. Do you think Assad is our enemy?
Assad is not the enemy of the United States because Syria does not pose a direct threat to the United States.
What do you say to Democratic voters who watched you go over there, and what do you say to military members who have been deployed repeatedly in Syria, pushing back against Assad?
People who have been deployed to Syria have been there focused on their mission, which has been to defeat ISIS. Our troops have not gone to Syria to wage yet another costly, destructive regime change war.
All right, joining us now to talk more about this pick, Sean Turner, the former director of communications for U.S. National Intelligence. Sean, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here. Your reaction to the selection of Tulsi Gabbard here, there are questions also that tie into this question about Assad that lead to Moscow. What do you see here?
Yeah, well, good morning, Casey. Thanks for having me. First, I've been saying that the president gets to pick his cabinet, and we know that, and we've got to accept that. But the role of the Director of National Intelligence, as you said at the outset, sits atop all the other intelligence agencies. It is one of the most complex cabinet-level positions that the president has. And this needs to be someone with a steady hand, who's experienced, who's qualified, and who is willing to speak truth to power, to give the president news, good, bad, or indifference. So when I look at someone like Tulsi Gabbard, and I look at the lack of qualification, the lack of experience, but more importantly, when I think about the fact that she is someone who is in the role not because of her understanding of intelligence, but because of her loyalty to Donald Trump, it really concerns me. The clip that you ran where she had met with Bashar al-Assad, to say that Bashar al-Assad, that Syria is not an enemy of the United States, suggests that she really doesn't understand the complex intelligence environment, and it completely discards the fact that we have partners and allies around the world, and Bashar al-Assad is a threat to our partners and allies. So I'm really concerned about this pick, and my hope is that, as many of these individuals do, that when she has the benefit of full knowledge, the full understanding of the intelligence community, that she realizes the weight of the job.